The 2025 Africa Cup of Nations resumes today in Morocco with some mouth-watering fixtures lined up. The first round of games produced little to no surprises as all the top guns secured victory, from the defending champions Côte d'Ivoire to the record title holders Egypt. But the second round promises even more fireworks for the continent's fans and even globally. But before we get into that, here's a recap of the tournament so far. More than 60,000 football fans were in attendance at the Prince Moulay Abdallah Stadium in Rabat for the opening ceremony and the first game of the tournament. Pre-game entertainment included musical performances, traditional dances, and light shows. Morocco went on to beat Comoros 2-0 to go top of Group A. From the same group, Zambia and Mali settled for a draw. In Group B, record AFCON title holders Egypt beat Zimbabwe by 2-1 as Mohamed Salah put his club woes behind him to net a stoppage time winner. South Africa also beat Angola by a similar margin as they kick-started their quest for an elusive second AFCON title. In Group C, East African sides Tanzania and Uganda fell to Nigeria and Tunisia respectively, upping the stakes for the group's next round of games. Group D featured a routine win for Senegal against Botswana, who are appearing at the Africa Cup of Nations for only their second time ever. DR Congo, on the other hand, defeated Benin in a game that had VAR controversy, one that left Benin feeling hard done. In Group E, Riyad Mahrez scored a brace to help Algeria beat Sudan 3-0, giving the Foxes a perfect start to their campaign. Burkina Faso, on the other hand, left it late to see off a stubborn Equatorial Guinea, who played much of the game one man down after Basile Ndong saw red in the 50th minute. And defending champions Côte d'Ivoire edged Mozambique 1-0 in Group D to match Cameroon's result against Gabon. As we mentioned before, little to no surprises in those games that we have seen so far at the tournament. But as we get into this discussion deeper, I am now joined by senior CGTN sports journalist Sadiq Shaban for a deeper dive into the conversation that is AFCON 2025. Sadiq, what has been your highlight of the game so far?
Jerry, I think after just the first round of matches, I would say it's still too early to call out any major surprises, as you've rightly said. It was almost a routine performance for Africa's top boys, if you will. The likes of Egypt, the likes of Côte d'Ivoire, the holders, the likes of Morocco, the host, everybody going through in the first round. There was victory, outward victory for everybody in all the groups, apart from Group A, where there was a draw between Mali and Zambia. So routine performance, if you will. But I'm looking at what second round promises to be, because a lot of football fans are saying during this first round, there was a 13th or a 12th player that players had not seen, and this was the weather. It was raining, it was cold, and it appears that every player, every other person who was playing may have been affected by that. So some bit of adjustment in the first round, Jerry. No surprises, as you've said, but you need to hold your breath for what's coming up on the second round. So too early to call for me at this particular time. It's Friday, the beginning of the next round of matches.
Yes, it's too early. I agree with you on that. But even after one game, it would be so hard to also get to know what kind of system these teams are playing. But who would you say has impressed you the most at this stage?
I think, teams are still playing, their cards very close to their chest. Look at their press conferences. The players are revealing very little. Journalists are trying so much to probe and get, the underlying factors, what's in their mind, trying to get into their mind. But for me, the team that sort of given me an indication that, well, it's good for African football is Sudan. Because Sudan hosted and won AFCON in 1970, and they're coming back since 2021 in Cameroon. Many people remember in Sudan in 2012 AFCON, which was co-hosted by Equatorial Guinea and Gabon. Sudan actually defied odds and went on beyond the group stage. Why I'm saying Sudan is because if you look at the current situation in the country of Sudan, they have been ravaged by conflict since 2023 between the Sudanese army and the RSF faction. And most of the players who play for this team actually have not even been home for a long time. Only this year we've had teams in the Sudanese Premier League playing in the Mauritanian National League, and later on teams like Al Hilal, went to Rwanda to play in the Premier League. So some of these players needed, to look beyond the conflict at home. And to imagine that Sudan nailed qualification at the expense of some of the big teams in Africa that are not in the Africa Cup of Nations makes it even special. So that defeat by Algeria for a lot of people was like, it was good enough. And Coach Kwasi up here said, Sudan is standing up for AFCON to lift the flag of that country and to give the people of Sudan something to cheer about. And Jerry, this is the beauty of African football. It goes beyond football. This is football for unity, trying to give people of Sudan something to cheer about. And Jerry, I'm hoping Sudan probably will score a goal. If they do score a goal, or at least net, a goal or force a draw in this competition, for me, that would be wonderful. So Sudan is a team that has captured my attention in this tournament for reasons that are more than just a game of football.
And it's interesting you mentioned Sudan because we have actually seen sports also trying to get a space into that part that is disturbed of the country, which is the whole country basically. And they are trying to unify the country, bring the people together, get something to smile about. But even that defeat itself does not tell the whole story because you could see them playing their hearts out, the players. They're playing for their coach, they're playing for their country, and they're really trying to do it for the coach who actually asked them to go and raise the flag of that nation in Morocco. But as you're even looking at the defeats, I want to also focus on the DR Congo beating Equatorial Guinea.
And Jerry, there was also the element, you have raised a very important question about football for unity. Look at countries in West Africa that have also undergone some bit of a coup recently. Teams that are featuring the Africa Cup of Nations. You look at Burkina Faso and some teams from West Africa. So, that element of, playing for pride, playing for the country, amidst conflict and so many other things. It's such an important aspect of this particular Africa Cup of Nations in 2025. It
is. I agree with you. But we are still going to get even bigger stories with the tournament. It's just the first round of games, so we expect so much is going to happen throughout the period that we're going to have the Africa Cup of Nations. But I want to focus on another defeat that also caught my eye. The Democratic Republic of Congo beating Equatorial Guinea. And you remember, the Democratic Republic of Congo actually beating Benin. And that game ended in a very controversial manner, I'd say.
Jerry, the Squirrels of Benin have complained that they were robbed in this match, Group D match, that ended 1-0 defeat to DR Congo. The Leopards of the DR Congo scraped by the strand of their hair, if you will. And all this, the Squirrels of Benin are saying it was because of technicality and not anything else, because the VAR, the video assistant referee system, failed during this time. And what an important time for it to fail, because a lot of people were looking actually at the South African referee, Abongilo Tom, who went to physically trying to check on that, but he couldn't do anything about that decision because the system had collapsed. And many people were wondering, because the Confederation of African Football say they have 14 video assistant referee among the 71 officials that are going to be in charge of this game. So CAF has not spoken about it. The CAF Referees Committee has been silent, and this only adds to the fury that Benin have against the VAR, and I'm sure they are demanding answers from CAF ahead of their game with Botswana on Saturday. But that wasn't just the only thing. There was about 10 minutes of additional time in that particular game. And it was majorly because of the referee communication problems. And people tied that, again, to the collapse of the system that also powers the VAR. So, again, there was also another element in that game, which I think football fans, hawk-eyed football fans picked up, that Chancel Mbemba handled the ball during that time. And Benin felt that they were entitled to a review, which could only be provided by the VAR, which, as we know, had collapsed in that game. Jerry will tell you, this controversy has come too early in the Africa Cup of Nations, but I want to assure you, it's not going to be the last. We are just seeing the first of it, and hopefully, we don't expect to have this conversation at such a crucial time, perhaps beyond the group stage, or when we get to the knockout stage, where every match will determine. So the Confederation of African Football, all eyes will be on them, and the referees committee in the coming days. The technical report is eagerly awaited, and I'm hoping they will correct these mistakes, because can you imagine if this happened in the final of the Africa Cup of Nations, where winners would say, we got robbed, not because we didn't fail to score, but we felt robbed by technology.
That's really interesting. So we just have to keep our eyes and see what really happens beyond even the group stage into the round of 16, the quarters, the semi, and even the final.
And this match cannot be replayed. There will be no decision that will be made on this one. It looks like it's dead and buried. So Benin will have to swallow it. I know it's a lump. They will have to swallow and probably look at Botswana in their second round match and see what they can do with it. But again, it goes to what we've been saying technically really for a long time, that you have to take all your chances clean and square. Early chances, all chances count, and all chances must be count. You cannot depend on VAR for victory in the Africa Cup of Nations. So those chances will count. Get your goals early when you can, and perhaps in situations only where VAR needs to, determine your fate, you leave it, to the fate of technology, as they say.
Getting your goals, you mentioned.
Yeah.
I want to talk also about Egypt and Burkina Faso. These are teams that actually scored very late on in their games to actually secure the 3 points that they did. Egypt, remember Mohamed Salah scoring in stoppage time, and also Burkina Faso, besides playing against a team that had a red card, needing to score 2 goals in stoppage time. How important do you think it's going to be for all these teams to stay focused throughout the period of the tournament?
I think a team, that cracker between Burkina Faso, the Burkinabes, the Stallions of Burkina Faso and Equatorial Guinea was a cracker because you have all the drama coming in on the dying minutes of the game. I mean, 90 plus 5 and 90 plus 8. And this is just the first round. Ordinarily, these are the drama reserved for quarters or the semifinals, but this has come in too early. And for me, it's probably just a window curtain. It's just a curtain that's been, open on what we could be having in the coming days. Jerry, the team that, for me, that doesn't seem to struggle so much here, and they come back with the advantage, is Morocco. Because prior to the Africa Cup of Nations, Morocco was playing in the FIFA Arab Cup. So they have already played a competitive match, a number of rounds before coming here. So they are very fit, they are focused, they are gelled. Other teams have been playing friendlies before the AFCON, but Morocco has been playing, in the FIFA Arab Cup. So we could even see the way the team is gelling. And going forward, teams that must, win here, as, Adebayo said, will be the team that will concede less goals and score more. So the drama that we have seen so far in extra time, I am possibly looking forward to a day where, perhaps in the second round, where matches could go up to, more time, more than regulation time. Jerry, we could have an AFCON in our hands where the final or the victory will be determined not just by extra time, but penalty kicks. I think we have such kind of match coming up, and I'm just hoping that's going to be the final of AFCON this year.
And yes, now just looking ahead now, the first round of games are done. Now we're going into the second round of the group stage. And here it's going to be crucial, especially for the teams that lost the first game. If they do lose again, they're definitely out of the tournament. So they're going to go into these games needing a win. And we have other big games that are going to be played. We have the defending champions, Cote d'Ivoire, playing Cameroon. We have Egypt going to take on South Africa. We also have Senegal taking on DR Congo. And another very interesting match, which is the East African derby that pits Uganda and Tanzania.
That people are saying, it's going to be a closely watched one, that Kenya and Tanzania, because those are the co-hosts of 2027 Africa Cup of Nations. Well, it's a shame that Kenya isn't there. Well, it would have been something if all of them had found themselves in one group. But Uganda and Tanzania should also provide such an interesting ingredient for their fans around this region who are waiting, with bated breath to see what kind of AFCON they're going to put. But for me, Jerry, I'm going to pick out Nigeria against Tunisia. And because Nigeria just got eliminated, from the World Cup playoffs by, DR Congo, and, former champions Tunisia are coming into this tournament seeking some sort of redemption in their own right, because in the last 5 editions of AFCON, they have been knocked out of this competition. Nigerian football fans told them, please transfer the anger, transfer the disappointment from that World Cup qualifying playoffs against DR Congo, which they lost, into this AFCON. And unless Nigeria gets an outright victory here or a draw, it is really going to put pressure on them, and they probably may want to forget this year in a hurry. Cape to Cairo derby, that match you have referenced, South Africa against Egypt, should be one for the books. We know there is so much between these two countries, even historically, politically. So when Egypt and South Africa collide, it's more than football. It's diplomacy, it's so many other things, because these are extreme ends of the continent that are playing. But as you've said, the signature clash here surely should be between the holders, Cote d'Ivoire and Cameroon. 2017 champions Cameroon coming to play the defending champions. How will this match go is anybody's for the guessing. But the pressure is very early on Cote d'Ivoire. They need to prove to everybody that hosting and winning AFCON was not a fluke. And for Cameroon, they have had problems coming into this competition with the coach, with the Federation, FA, Samuel Eto'o. So they want to put everything behind them and focus on Cote d'Ivoire. And that game will not be easy.
Nice. Let's now just focus a little on Morocco in terms of the preparation, the infrastructure that they have had in place. What do you take of the preparation that they have had? Also remember, they're going to be co-hosting the 2030 World Cup with Portugal and Spain. How important do you think it is for them to actually successfully host the AFCON 2025 tournament?
Jerry, I think for Morocco, the journey to hosting AFCON has been a long one. Since they last hosted AFCON in 1986, it's been, 37 years? Long years they have waited for. They would have hosted AFCON in 2015 had it not been for the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. But Morocco has put everything in place. They have tested their logistics, transportation, train systems are working, football fans are moving around very easily. Morocco is also using sports diplomacy to project itself as a destination of football in Africa. And also just to imagine that Morocco is going to host the next 5 edition of the FIFA Under-17 World Cup should give you an indication that this country is really, really on a path, to sort of using diplomacy in sports, and getting into 2030, which are going to be co-hosting against Spain and Portugal. Morocco has put itself on a very vantage position. In fact, pole position. And I do not see why future events, or big African event, should not be taken to that country, because they renovated 9 stadia for AFCON. They have hosted a number of events. They hosted the women's AFCON. They hosted AFCON futsal and so many other events. So Morocco is in a pole position to hosting AFCON. And I think they're in the same major leagues like Europe and stuff in terms of organization. So coming back to Africa, bringing the World Cup back to Africa since 2010 is really going to be something special for Morocco.
It will be. And still sticking to the World Cup, 2 teams that have qualified for the World Cup, Ghana and Cape Verde, but surprisingly miss out on the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations. Was it because the competition got tougher here back home?
It's the brutality of the qualification process of the Africa Cup of Nations. This is a creme de la creme of the, of the best teams playing football in Africa. If your team has not qualified for AFCON, you would not understand the pain of the former, of Ghana, who have not qualified for AFCON for the first time since 2004. Make no mistake, Ghana is ranked 72nd in the world right now and 14th in Africa. Cape Verde, 67 and 13th in Africa. So when you look at Cape Verde, they have qualified for the World Cup for their first time, but they failed to qualify for AFCON. It gives you an indication that this tournament is really, really very tight. You also have countries like Guinea, who are regulars at the Africa Cup of Nations. They have not qualified. Countries like, for example, Namibia, who have been rising in African football. And also, if you want to look at countries like, for example, the Gambia, they've had some sort of football renaissance in the past few years, but they have not been there. So Africa Cup of Nations is brutal, both in the qualification, in the campaign itself. And those that have lost the final, Jerry, will tell you just how painful it is to lose, let alone qualify.
Nice. And I just want to get a little off the Africa Cup of Nations 2025 and onto something larger. Just ahead of the beginning of this tournament, CAF President Patrice Motsepe did make a very huge announcement, which then shifts the Africa Cup of Nations from being held every 2 years to being held every 4 years. Let's listen in to what he had to say.
In discussions with all our stakeholders and taking into account the global fixtures, the AFCON now will now take place once every 4 years. Because historically, the AFCON was the prime focus where we could get resources to fund African football. In terms of this new dispensation, we will be getting resources every year.
That's a very interesting announcement and a shift by the current CAF administration, Sadiq, 2 years to 4 years. How does that impact African football?
CAF says the pressure, the global football pressure on players has been too much. They also need to align themselves with the global calendar. Also FIFA World Cup coming in there, FIFA Club World Cup as we have seen. But football fans are not very pleased with that decision. They say that decision should have been given more thought, should have been given more considerations. And some African FA presidents have been speaking out, through, proxies, saying that this idea should have been put through the CAF General Assembly and should not have been left in the hands of the CAF Executive Committee members. But then again, we are looking at an expanded qualification period that's going to go for 4 years. That means some players that we are seeing in one AFCON may actually not transition to another AFCON. But also in the same vein, perhaps the 10 African countries that have never qualified for AFCONs, teams like Central African Republic, Chad, Djibouti, Eritrea, Eswatini, Lesotho, Sao Tome and Principe and Seychelles, could have an opportunity to make their mark at the Africa Cup of Nations. But the question still remains why this decision was made and what happens in between the 4 years. There is the African Nations Tournament, a new competition that has been contemplated. But we also know that at this time, Jerry, also, that this could also sound, the death bells for the African Nation Championship, CHAN, which was co-hosted by Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania this time. So a lot of changes coming in. It's still very unclear this time. Still a lot of unknowns at this time. Perhaps in the coming few weeks, we'll get clearer pictures of what actually prompted this decision by CAF.
But something positive. The money increases, the prize money for the Africa Cup of Nations. Right now it's $7 million, it's jumping to $10 million, and that's a huge sum.
That was a big surprise, also announcement by CAF president this year, and also one of the things they are saying is that they want to increase more revenue. By having this thing after 4 years, CAF says it's going to inject more revenue. So if you look at the evolution of prize money in AFCON, it has moved from 4 million, 7 million, now it's 10 million. And also very important that every team that is taking part in AFCON this time is going to get something. But imagine if they have more revenues in the coming weeks. What are we looking at? We are looking at an AFCON where the prize money could also compete with the UEFA Champions League, Copa Libertadores, and other major competitions that are in the same stature with the Africa Cup of Nations.
Sadiq, we could go on and on and on talking about AFCON, talking about African football, talking about the prospects of some of the teams that are going to be playing for the next 1 month in Morocco.
Who is your favorite here? Let me just throw in the hot seat very quickly.
I will go with Egypt. I have always gone with Egypt and I will remain with Egypt.
I reserve my comments there.
I am backing Salah to take the energy from Liverpool to his Egyptian camp.
I reserve my comments.
That has been our time. Thank you so much for sticking with us. Remember, 4 games are going to be played today as the Africa Cup of Nations 2025 gets into the second round of the group stage games. Stick with us throughout the coverage of the Africa Cup of Nations 2025. We're going to be giving you all the updates, all the reviews and previews of the games as you try to give you a full picture of what is happening in Morocco. Remember, you can also join in the conversation through our comment sections by just telling us who you support and if you fancy them to go all the way and lift the title. That has been our time. Till next time.